Hey everyone. As you know, we're not going to have class today, so we are doing a lecture as a video. And today's topic I wanted to talk about was sales, um, in particular, and then trade marketing. So we have gone through most of the P's now. Product promotion. The next one is place, and we are talking about distribution and how products get to people. And so we're going to talk about trade marketing because that really plays a role in um, how products get marketed to people within a distribution channel. But before we do that, I thought it would be important to talk about sales and the sales cycle. Um, this is typically a more of a business to business kind of sales cycle where you have one business trying to sell something, a product, a service, a subscription, whatever it is, consulting services, etc., to another business. So when sales is when we're trying to do sales, there's really a whole sort of cycle of things that happen. And so I'm going to actually start up in the left of the diagram, over on the left side of the screen. I'm going to start up in the top left where it says prospecting. So the idea in sales of prospecting is I am going to go out and look for potential customers that I may want to talk to that might be interested in me. And so ideally what's happened is if I'm a business to business company, I have really defined who, I've done my segmentation, I've defined who my target is. And then and then in business, what we often talk about is this idea of my ideal client profile. So I've got my target. Now I want to talk about what does my ideal client profile look like? What kind of business, what size business is it? Where is the business located? What industry is it in? And then who within that business do I want to talk to? So if I'm selling software or some kind of SaaS product, or I'm trying to sell some piece of technical equipment, I might be looking for the chief technology officer or the chief information officer. But so who am I looking for? And I'm going to go through whether it's on LinkedIn, or there are lots of places where you can buy lists of potential customers, etc., and get their email addresses or their phone numbers, whatever. But I'm going to go looking for lists of people that I want to talk to. Or I might actually decide to go to a conference. So maybe I'm going to go to some kind of technology conference, or some kind of conference where there would be a lot of CIOs or chief technology officers. But that's what prospecting is about, is trying to figure out who my customer is and where they are and how can I talk to them. We also can use, sort of marketing techniques to try and get people interested in our product and hopefully to generate some inbound demand, which would be sort of how do I get people to actually reach out and talk to me? And that might be by doing a webinar or something like that, or offering some kind of conference or assessment or something where I'm trying to get people coming that I don't know, that I haven't talked to actually come to me. But that's all the activities that fit within prospecting. The next piece is, now that I've done my prospecting and I figure out who I'm going to talk to, or I've gotten them to reach out to me or whatever it is, now I need to make contact. And this could be anywhere from sending an email or a message on LinkedIn to setting up a call, or a meeting with somebody or whatever. But I'm going to somehow make contact, and try and, ideally what I'm trying to do is get them to talk to me. At this point, I want to get a meeting so that I can start to understand their problems and convince them that I have a solution for them. So the next piece of the puzzle is called qualifying your prospect. So the qualification process is really, really important, especially in business to business marketing. The idea of qualifying your client or your prospect is, does this prospect have the problem that I can solve? right? So if a prospect doesn't do any marketing, there's no point in selling them marketing software, right? I got to make sure they have the problem that I can solve. I also need to make sure that they don't have a solution already. So if I'm a marketing agency and I'm trying to convince a company to work with me, as their marketing agency, and they already have a marketing agency, then they may not be in the market for a marketing agency, and so they're not qualified. I'm going to disqualify them. I'm going to stop talking to them and stop wasting time, talking to somebody who doesn't need my help. Now, just because somebody has a solution doesn't mean that you just stop talking to them, because sometimes they have a solution that they're not happy with. So if I start talking to a customer and I determine that they have a marketing agency, but they're unhappy with a marketing agency, I may continue to have a conversation with them. I also need to determine, do they have money? If they don't have a budget for what I offer, then they are not qualified to be a client, and so I'm not going to continue that conversation. And the other one that's really important is the person that I'm talking to actually the decision maker? This doesn't necessarily disqualify the prospect as a client, but I may be able to convince the person I'm talking to that I'm a really good solution. But if they don't get to decide what the solution is, then that's not necessarily the most useful thing. So I may actually have to, in this qualification process, determine that this is an interesting person to talk to because they can go advocate for me with their boss or whatever, but it's really their boss or their boss's boss that I need to talk to. So that's called qualifying your prospect. It's a really important part of the sales cycle. And this is the part of the sales cycle where you're determining whether or not the prospect, you're trying to understand their pain points. You're trying to understand that we've been talking about. We're trying to understand what are the problems that they have, trying to really dig into and understand what do they need and whether or not we have a solution that fits. And if we don't have a solution that fits, the most important thing is to actually disqualify them as quickly as possible. Because if I spend 6 months with a client who I could have disqualified in the first meeting, I've just wasted a lot of my time. I'd rather disqualify somebody quickly and then go find a new prospect that might be a better prospect for me. So the next piece is, now I've got to nurture my prospect. So it's very, very common, especially in like consulting services, IT services, things like that. It's very, very common that that these sorts of projects can take, go through a very large piece of equipment can sometimes take, 6 months to a year or even a couple years to actually get the client to get on board and actually sign a contract. And so you have to actually spend time nurturing the relationship with this prospect. So I've determined that they have a need, or I determined that they will have a need in a year. In the meantime, I've got to just build a relationship with them, build a connection, get them to trust me, that so that I become sort of their go-to solution when they are ready to purchase whatever services or goods I'm offering. So how do you do this? Well, you have a conversation. You have calls with them. You might take them out to dinner. You might send them thought leadership pieces, or send them articles that are interesting to them, or provide some kind of information or assessment for them that that can help them in their decision-making process. But in the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is create some connection with this prospect. After you've done all that, you've nurtured this prospect, whatever, and you have this conversation, when you figure out that they are ready to potentially buy your services, now what you're going to do is you're going to present an offer to them. So you're going to basically say, for whatever, $100,000, we're going to do this project for you, or for $1 million a year, we're going to offer this service, or whatever it is. I'm going to present my offer, but I'm not going to present my offer until I've A, made sure this prospect is qualified, and B, that I've really nurtured that prospect. I really shouldn't be making offers to people or proposals to people until I really understand whether they're ready to buy. In fact, one of the things that I always say to people is, when somebody asks me for a proposal, I almost always say no. I always say, let's have more conversation, because when they're asking for a proposal is rarely when they're ready to actually buy. The next piece is, now that I've presented my offer, I need to overcome objections. And what that means is they might be objecting to, hey, the way you're going to go about the solution, I'm not sure it's going to work. Or they might be objecting to the price, or they might be saying, well, I think this is great, but I'm struggling with getting my boss on board. Can you meet with my boss, et cetera? So I have to overcome all those objections, anything that's going to get in my way. And that's when I can finally get to the last stage where I close the sale. This process, looking at the bullets on the right there, is often called personal or consultative selling. It's often used in business-to-business settings for very high-ticket items and repetitive services. The process involves multiple conversations in order to qualify the client. Again, that point of, can we help? Do they have the money? Do they have the authority? And ultimately, we then use all of that to create an agreement. So the reason I share this with you here is that this is very much the process that goes on in business to business. And people often think about sales as being completely separate from marketing. But the reality is that sales and marketing have to go hand in hand. Every step of the way, that sales representative who is having this conversation needs marketing support. They might need articles, they might need some kind of handout, they might need some kind of an email that they can send, or a video, or whatever it is. They need all that stuff, and usually it's marketing's job to create all of those assets that the salespeople use. All right, so that's the B2B setting. So now what I wanted to share was, if we move back into more of a B2C, although sometimes is a B2B, but more of a more traditional sort of business to consumer kind of product marketing, is think about the fact that if I were Nabisco, for example, and I am selling Oreos, I do not sell my Oreos directly to the consumer. I sell it to Walmart, Target, Stop and Shop, whatever. And so in some ways, even though Nabisco is selling consumer products, their sales process is really a business to business sales process, because they are trying to sell their product to a supermarket or a Walmart or whatever it is, and they have to sell it to those people first. Now, what does that mean? You're thinking, well, yeah, but every supermarket carries Oreos, right? But how do I convince them that, hey, you need to put my Oreos on display instead of those Keebler cookies? How do I convince you that you should put my cookies on display more, or that that my products are going to sell better, so they deserve better position on the shelf or whatever? So all of those decisions about where the product gets placed, when it gets displayed, when it gets on sale, all those things, that's a negotiation that happens even though they've already taken the product into the store. That negotiation is happening every year, all the time, for every couple of weeks, when they're making decisions about what they're changing and what they're going to do in the store. So that's where trade or channel marketing comes in. Trade or channel marketing refers to the marketing activities that are typically done between product manufacturers and wholesalers or retailers in their supply chain. In order to sell a product through a third party, the third party has to see the value of the product and of prioritizing their own activities like displays, prices, promotions around selling that manufacturer's product, right? So I've got to convince these people that are going to sell my product that my product is worth selling. Otherwise, they may just not sell it that much, or they may delist my product and actually take it out of their store. So there's a number of different layers to the trade or channel marketing process. The first layer is strategic, right? So I'm going to set up a trade strategy plan. So if I'm Nabisco, I have a plan for Walmart, I have a plan for Target, I have a plan for Stop and Shop. All the big customers, I am going to have to build a strategic plan to recognize that I have to somehow support and get my product into all of these different customers in different ways. So I'm going to create a plan that sort of looks at all these different customers and says, this is how I'm going to approach each of them. That might include doing a customer census and classification. So I might say, hey, I've got a couple of really big mass marketing customers like Walmart and Target. I've got club customers like Sam's Club and Costco. And I've got grocery clients, big grocery clients like Ahold and Kroger. And then I have smaller grocery clients like Market Basket or something like that. So I'm going to classify, and I'm going to look at all my different customers and classify them and sort of think about how I want to think about each of those. And then I'm going to do a bunch of research on those, particularly the bigger ones. Like what are the big initiatives that Walmart has right now? So if Walmart has a big, at one point when I was working in Nabisco, they had a big organic initiative. So the question was, should we be making organic Oreos, which is a whole other conversation we can have in class someday. But if I'm, how do I create products or create promotions that fit with what these big customers are doing? So I want to do research and understand what's important to them. What are they looking for? And then I also want to look at analytics of what's selling well. Do I have a product that's in Walmart that's selling really well that Target never took? And so can I convince them that they want they should take this product or whatever? So I'm going to look at all of those analytics along with the customer research and the customer census and classification to build a trade strategic plan in which I make decisions about to what extent am I going to focus my energy on Walmart versus Target versus Stop and Shop, etc. So now that I've got a strategy, now I'm going to operationalize that strategy. And so within the operational part of channel marketing, there's something called category management. So at Nabisco or at the Hershey Company, for example, there's a whole function called category management where they are essentially doing research and tracking how products and so forth are performing, both the company's products and their competitors' products, all the time within the category. In the case of Nabisco, it might be of cookies and crackers, right? And they're looking at that, and they actually are sometimes, like, for example, they'll have a category management team that is assigned specifically to Walmart, for example, and they are looking at all of the different metrics in the category and saying, hey, this type of product is doing better, or this size of package is doing better, or our products are doing better than our competitors' products, or the competitors' products are doing better than our products, or whatever it is, to start to understand, what do I need to do within this specific customer to make my products successful? One of the things that is really important certainly in the consumer packaged goods world, is that sometimes you can convince a customer like Walmart or Target or whatever to make your business or your category management person what's called the category captain. And in that case, essentially what you do is you become sort of an outsourced category research arm for the customer. And the way you do that is by essentially being very objective, even when your product isn't doing well, or some piece of information comes up that isn't necessarily the best for you. You're honest about it. You tell them about it, but you're really out there trying to help that the category folks, the buyers, if you will, in the customer. You're trying to help them understand how to get the most out of their category. And if you are helpful, they may make you a category captain. The reason you would want to be the category captain is that when there's a tie, when you say, hey, you could either put our product in the best position or the competitor's product in the best position, you will win that tie because you are there in the conversation. You are providing fair and balanced information, and they're going to reward you for that. So that's what category management is all about, is understanding the category that you sell in, and often supporting the internal folks within your customer to give them information so that they can make informed decisions, hopefully that ultimately benefit your company in the long run. The other thing that's really important is trade programs. So I may have specific programs that I go to all of my different all of my different customers with. So for example, when I was the Hershey company, we had a convenience store trade program called the Big 33. And it was all about, you had to have, if a customer had certain 33 Hershey items in their stores, in distribution, if they took a certain number of displays a year, whatever, they got a special discount on all of the Hershey products. So if they sort of met sort of a menu of criteria, they would get special special pricing, essentially. So that would be an example of a trade program where I create a program that's designed to incentivize my customer to carry my products, to put my products on display with a certain frequency, etc. The other piece operationally is trade coverage. So that means, where do I have sales reps? So I might have a whole team of sales supporting our relationship with Walmart, but I might have maybe one or two people that are sort of or another team that basically is like, they just cover all of the small grocery chains in New England. So how you cover, what customers you cover, sometimes talk about like sort of geographical coverage, like maybe I don't have as much business out in the West Coast, so I just don't have as many people out there or whatever. But just determining, how do I cover the customers, how many people I'm supporting with or whatever. And then the next piece is the trade investment planning. So at the strategic level, in the previous stage, I would have determined where I wanted to focus my energy. And one of the things I probably would have figured out in that stage is, where do I want to put my money? How much of my trade dollars that I have available to me to spend, because I can't spend everything, how much do I put against Walmart versus Target versus, say, Stop and Shop or whatever? I'm going to make those decisions. Now that I've made that decision, I have a bucket of money for, say, Walmart. I have to make a trade investment plan. And this would be like, I have to take that bucket of money, let's say it's a couple $1 million, and I have to decide how much of am I going to spend of that for Easter, how much I'm going to spend for Christmas, how much I'm going to spend over the summer, am I going to spend it differently in different types of stores, etc. So where am I going to put my money to get the most bang for my buck? All right, so now that I've done all that, I've done all this planning, and at this point, I'm probably having a lot of conversations with the customer, sort of negotiating, and that gets us into the executional phase. So account management is like when I actually have my people going in and working with that specific customer to try and figure out what they need, what they want, negotiating with them, having discussions, talking about prices, talking about how frequently you're going to be on display, how frequently the price is going to be dropped, what kind of price reduction you're going to do, etc. All of that has to be negotiated, because if you think about it, is when the customer, Walmart or Target or Stop and Shop, when they drop the price, they are giving up some of their profit on that product, because they make, let's say they make $2 on a $5 bag of Oreo. If you drop it to $4, they're only making $1 on that. And so they're going to expect that you're going to reimburse them for their, at least share the cost. Generally speaking, they're going to expect that you reimburse them for that difference, and you're going to have to use your trade dollars and so forth. And so they're going to be they're going to limit you as to how often you can do that. You can't just drop your price all the time, and whatever. You have to negotiate with them, and that's what the account management folks do. Sometimes you will have territory management instead of account management. This is in a business where you have a lot of small players and not a lot of big customers like Walmart. You might manage on a territory or geographic basis. And so that territory management might be, again, convenience stores for the Hershey company were probably managed on a territory. You'd have like a Northeast group versus a Southern group or whatever it is. And you'd also have sort of there are some national convenience store accounts, but most of the convenience stores are sort of regional players, et cetera. So I might manage that by territory. Trade approaches. How am I going to have those conversations with the people that that buy from me are these conversations, sort of regular conversations that I'm having all the time because I have a team that supports this group. Am I meeting them at conferences? Where am I having these conversations? And that sort of leads me into the last, which was this trade events and relations. So I'll give an example of every year there is a huge convention in Chicago called the Candy and Snack Convention. And the Hershey Company, Nabisco, they'd all have gigantic booths there. Is that the most important way that they sell products? Probably not, but they have to be there, because if they're not there, then their customers are going to kind of be like, I don't know what's going on with Hershey, or maybe Mars will be there having a conversation with them, and they'll get something that Hershey wanted, or whatever. Most of the booths at those trade shows are tiny players that are trying to break into the category. There are hundreds of chocolate manufacturers and whatever out there at all times, and they have a booth, and they're trying to just get somebody, because they know everybody in the category is there. They're just trying to get a conversation going, and hoping that they're going to get their product listed somewhere or whatever. So that is all that stuff that I just described is going on all the time in companies who are trying to manage the relationships, not directly with the consumer. I mean, Hershey Company's doing that. We've looked at some Twizzler ads and Oreo ads and so forth. Like, companies are managing the relationship with the consumer, but behind the scenes, there's a tremendous amount of work to manage the relationship with the customer as well. And their customer is a trade customer like Walmart, Target, or Stop and Shop. So that's what trade marketing is all about. So I hope you can see why I put sales, the sales cycle, which is typically more B2B, together with this, which is in these sort of B2C, business to consumer categories, is that there's this relationship between the manufacturer and the retailer, or even a wholesaler, that has to be marketed to, that has nothing to do with or has something to do with the consumer, but that's sort of down the path later. So I thought I would give, as always, an example from my career about sort of when this kind of thing came into play. So one of the projects that I was put on when I first started at the Hershey Company was called Reinventing the Candy Aisle. And so we had gone out and done a bunch of research to try and understand what is the best way to set up the candy aisle so that you maximize the sales, ideally for Hershey, but also ideally for the customer as well. And it turns out that there was this sort of interesting piece of research that we did that showed that the best way to set up the aisle was to understand how the consumer shops for candy and how they go through the decision-making process about what candy they're going to buy. So the folks at Mars, because of the nature of their products like Snickers and so forth, are such huge items in the candy aisle. They would go in and they would say, you should block everything by brand. You should essentially have a Snickers section of the aisle and a Reese's section of the aisle and whatever. And they said that because that was what, from their perspective and their research, showed that that's the way that Mars sold the most candy. But when we looked at it from a Hershey perspective, because our portfolio has many, many more products that are much smaller, we actually determined that that was not the best way to set up the aisle, not for Hershey, but also not for the category as a whole. Because the way people shop for candy is the first thing they think about before they think about brand is, what am I going to use this candy for? So if I want something to eat in the car on the way home, I want a candy bar. If I want something for my to pour into my candy dish, I want small pieces of candy, like say Hershey's Kisses or Reese's Miniatures, or those miniature Snickers or whatever it is. That's what I want. But I don't know which brands I want yet. But if you put me in front of all of the products that are of that type, the small things that go in candy dishes, then I can stand there and go, well, I want Snickers, but I don't want to only have one product in my candy dish. So I'm going to grab Snickers, and I'm going to have Reese's, and I'm going to have Kisses and whatever. And so one of the sections of the aisle, it turns out, that we proposed to our customers was candy dish. For candy dish candy, we had a different section of the aisle that was called snacking candy. This is where like the Milk Duds and the Reese's Pieces and all those kinds of things the hot tamales and all that stuff that you get in like boxes at theaters and so forth. All that kind of snacking candy went. There was a premium chocolate section that was all the Dove, the sort of high-end dark chocolate, all that kind of stuff. There was a candy and mint section. This was like the non-chocolate candy stuff and so forth. So you had all these different sections that you would ideally break the aisle into. And so we had researched whole bunch of different pieces of research that demonstrated that not only was this the way the consumer shops the aisle and thinks when they shop the aisle, we actually did a bunch of research where we would go shopping with people and ask them questions about their shopping decisions to try and understand this, how they shop this aisle. Once we knew how they shop the aisle, we would then go to our and we would go to customers and say, our customers or direct customers, Walmart, Target, etc. I think Target was one of the companies that we did this, and we said, hey, our research shows that this is the better way to set up the aisle. And we would convince them in a couple of stores, for example, can you set up the aisle this way? And so we did a test, and sure enough, when we did the test, the category overall grew, meaning Target sold more candy, which was great for us because when Target sells more candy, we would sell more candy. Mars also sold more candy, as did other players when we did this, but maybe not as much as if they had done it their way, which is why they were trying to convince people of the other side of the coin. So that whole project was really a category management project. I talked about category management where we were going in and basically saying, we're going to do some research for you to demonstrate that if you set up your aisle this way, you will actually make more money and grow the whole category. And you, the candy buyer, will look like a genius because you got all this growth because you set up the aisle in the right way. So that is an example of trade marketing activities where we were using research to try and convince our customer of a certain decision, get them to make a decision, and actually use that to grow the category. So the bullets on the right there, trade marketing activities include everything from shelf placement to price promotions to displays. Manufacturers, as I mentioned before, often have whole teams dedicated to individual customers like Walmart or Target to try to maximize sales in those large channels. The Hershey Company, for example, probably had 10 or 15 people who were dedicated to just working with Walmart. And then that process involves strategic thinking, planning, and budgeting. It involves research. All of the things that we've been talking about are used to try and maximize how your product is doing and how the category is doing overall. So that is my presentation on sales and trade marketing. Hopefully it gives you a better understanding of how those pieces fit in with the broader marketing picture overall. I will see you in class next week.